Resident Evil.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of So What You Saying. My name is Tom, and joining me today is my good friend Harry, because Sean is busy this evening. He's out gigging with his band, so Harry has agreed to join me for this video. We're going to be doing something a little bit different this week. We're not talking about music. We're instead going to take a break from that and look at some video games. Today, we're going to be ranking the Resident Evil mainline series games. We're not going to be looking at the spin-off games like Survivor or Outbreak, because we haven't played them. So we're only going to be sticking to the mainline games and their remakes. So Harry, you ready to begin?
Yeah, really. This feels like a video that's been a long time coming.
So we're going to go in the order these games were released. So starting off with the first game, that being Resident Evil. My initial thoughts on this game, funny enough, even though it's the first one that was released, it wasn't the first one I played. I actually played 2 and 3 first, and then I went back and played this one. This was, however, the first one I saw being played by somebody else. So, in a sense, it is my first introduction to the franchise. I remember going over to my friend's house at the time. His older brother was playing it, because, of course, I was a bit too young at the time to play it. And we watched the intro, even though it's incredibly, the live action intro. And even though
Yeah.
it's incredibly cheesy by today's standards, it legit terrified me. Considering it's the first game in the franchise, I'm going to be quite kind to it. I think it's a good game. I haven't gone back and played it in a very long time, but I do have a lot of nostalgia towards it. I like the fact that, the game offers replayability because you've got 2 separate characters, Chris clearly being the hard mode, Jill being the easier mode. It was the first real game to make the survival horror genre really popular. Resource management played a huge part in this game, limited saves, which all add to the tension. The level design with the mansion was really good as well, and I thought the puzzles, although difficult, was somewhat manageable for me at that young age to work out. I don't really have a huge amount to say about it because I haven't gone back and played it in a long time. It really does show its age, with the tank controls being a big thing. Even though they remained in place for a long time, I felt they were easily at their worst in this game. The characters feel incredibly heavy to control. But due to it being the first in the franchise, the impact it's had on the gaming industry, arguably one of the most important games ever made, I'm quite happy to put it in the good category.
I like you, I've got quite early memories of this game. I remember going to a friend's house and watching them play it. Another one, sort of slightly different memories when we were dog sitting, and the person we were dog sitting had Resident Evil and a surround sound system. The actual soundscape of the original game is excellent as well. So even more so for your sort of how feeling atmospheric, when you play it with surround sound, it's even more terrifying. Also, what I also quite like, again, like you said, the Chris and Jill's games feel distinctly different. Although you go through the same set of events and the same sort of bosses, when you play as Chris, you have to go for a lot longer without the shotgun, whereas
Mm.
Jill kind of gets the shotgun quite easily, and it just really good sort of differences between how the gameplay works.
Jill has Barry Burton backing her up as well,
Yeah, yeah.
who's way better than Rebecca Chambers.
Yeah, Rebecca Chambers is terrible. Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. It's definitely it was a good intro to the first installment.
Moving on, we have Resident Evil 2. This is my favorite game from the PlayStation era. It's one of those examples of how to make the perfect sequel. It took everything that was great from the first game and expanded on it further. Even though it's slightly more action orientated, it still manages to keep a hold of its initial survival horror roots. So ammo is still somewhat limited, resource management is still a thing. I think the Raccoon City police station might be my favorite location or setting for any of the Resident Evil games. It's either between that or the Spencer mansion from the first game. They're really neck and neck for me. I also love the fact that the game entices you to replay it at least 4 times with the A, B scenario or B, A, depending on how you want to play it. My only nitpick with this game is that I feel like Leon's campaign is a little bit more entertaining than Claire's, mainly due to the weapons that he gets to use compared to Claire. So Leon gets the shotgun and the Magnum, whereas Claire gets the bolt gun, which isn't a very good weapon, and she also gets the grenade launcher. I know she gets different ammo types for it, but frankly, the shotgun and the Magnum are the better choices, in my opinion. I know William Birkin is like the big baddie in this game, but I think one of the best new inclusions they brought in was the introduction to Mr. X, the stalker enemy who occasionally shows up in, I believe it's in the B scenario, and so
Yeah.
and chases your character down. Even though it's quite easy to put him down, it's still a nice thing that they've added to the game. So yeah, I absolutely love this game. I even love the soundtrack as well. Bar than that minor nitpick aside, I would put this in the masterpiece category.
Again, I've got really early memories of this. I remember my brother Alec buying this for the first time. We used to sit down, and you used to do that sort of switching. I'd play a section, or they'd play a section, and remember the layout. And the layout of the police station is definitely one of the best locations in the whole of the Resident Evil series. I love the fact that you've got the scenario A and the scenario B. It just expands upon what one did well and just made it better. So you had all the things that you do in scenario A that kind of affect how scenario B is going to play out. And then you've got the flip side when you're playing as either Leon or Claire. I also quite like the fact that you introduce another character that's related to some of the characters in the first film, in the first game as well. Leon is such a relatable character because it's his first day on the job in that game. It's just like he's turned up and everything's gone to hell, and you're kind of going, you're with him straight away. Claire's is a little bit harder to kind of get into, and also, who's the little girl?
Oh,
Birkin's
Sherry, yeah,
daughter,
that's another
Sherry.
nitpick. That's another nitpick I have. When you have to play as Sherry, it's easily the worst part of the entire
Yeah,
game.
the bosses are far more interesting in
Mm.
two. Like when you get the giant alligator that comes at you
Oh
down in the
yeah, yeah.
sewers, and then obviously Birkin himself has got some of the most. Like, at the time, it was so gruesome,
Mm.
especially when his whole sort of side splits open and there's this huge eye comes out,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you have to try and like shoot at that part of him. It's sort of it's yeah, grim.
So we agree that goes into masterpiece then, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. I'm glad we agree on that one. Moving on, we have the follow-up to Resident Evil 2, that being Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Another game that I played a lot. Like, I played this game a lot when it first came out, to the point where I sort of convinced myself it was my favorite game in the franchise for a very long period of time. Of course, the big selling point of this game is the Nemesis itself, who's basically Mr. X on steroids, way faster, way more intelligent, and way more difficult to defeat. I mean, my God, if you can make it through some of those early battles with the Nemesis, with the pistol shotgun, then fair play to you. I mean, still to this day, it gives me so much trouble trying to down the Nemesis. I also like the fact they bring Jill Valentine back because she's my favorite. After Leon, she's my second favorite. Certainly my favorite female protagonist in the whole franchise as well. I've always had a soft spot for Jill, so it was great to play her again. This game is even more action-packed compared to the previous two games, a lot more action-focused. There's never particularly a time when you're super low on ammo because they introduced like the gunpowder mechanic, so you could mix like, but that was always a fun thing to do to, try out different gunpowder combinations to see which ammunition you would get. I believe this is also the only game in the mainline franchise that has freeze rounds for the grenade launcher, which is basically kryptonite to the Nemesis. It's easily the best weapon you can use against him. In many ways, this game takes a few steps forward. It also takes a few steps back. For example, there is only one scenario you can play in this game. They ditched the A-B scenario, which I think is a huge mistake. It does offer some replayability in certain areas, like the whole, like, for example, when you get attacked by Nemesis, for example, or you find yourself in a dire situation, you have to make a decision. What are you going to do? Are you going to battle the monster, or are you going to run into the police station? So depending on what choices you make, can alter the ending slightly. In addition, this also introduced the Mercenaries side game as well, another thing I played a lot of as well. And if you play it enough, some of the rewards you get, infinite ammo, infinite rocket launcher, infinite chain gun. So I wanted that infinite rocket launcher. So once again, I grinded and grinded until I finally got it. Yeah, I personally really like this game. I still enjoy it to this day. I wouldn't put it in masterpiece, but I would put it in the great category because I have a real soft spot for it.
I agree. It is a great game, and it does fit in. It's not for me. It's not quite as good as two, But three definitely has the storyline. You get an expansion on the best part of two, which is where the outbreak starts. So you've got her in the city, it's going to chaos straight
Mm,
away. And that I find really interesting to play. And then obviously the Nemesis being so relentless. Like by the time you get to the end, I remember playing it for the first time and I was exhausted. It really felt like an old school horror movie. You know, when you're going to
mm,
go, is this boss? And it kind of sets it up like each. I think there's about four bosses towards the end when you're fighting the Nemesis.
mm,
And you think, oh, is this the end of it? And then you
mm,
do another little bit, and then it's like it's still back. And then
mm,
even by that point, when she's got the Magnum and like blows the
mm.
tiny bit that's left,
It's still
it's like
pulsating.
thank God. And then you get on the helicopter and it all blows up, and you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh. So it has a real satisfying, it's probably one of the most satisfying endings out of all the Resident Evil games. That bit where you finally do defeat the Nemesis is, oh, exquisite. There is only a couple of issues I have with it is that there are sort of some of the puzzle parts are a bit confusing
Yeah, there are some
when
puzzles
I've
that
gone back.
suck in this game.
Jill being one of the best characters to play
Mm,
as. So again, returning from the first game, she was always a lot of fun and a really good character. I found that this one was interesting because they introduced a bit more of the easy, medium, hard,
mm.
because obviously they've only got one mode, which is playing
Well,
as
hard
Jill.
mode was pretty much normal mode.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
whereas if you played easy, you suddenly got the assault rifle. And to be fair, I kind of like that in some respects because I'm the kind of person who quite enjoys just blowing away zombies. So sometimes I like to play on an
Hmm.
easier mode to just be able to just clearing a whole area and then being like, yes, I killed everything. It's definitely in the great category. And I kind of just it's that progression that you see the Nemesis go through. Like
Mm.
each time you defeat him, as the game progresses, he just becomes more and more sort of mutated, different parts start to grow out of him, and it becomes he's a really interesting villain.
Okay, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, you got some
Definitely in
flaws,
the
but
great category.
you're still a great game. Moving on, we have Resident Evil Code Veronica X. Harry, I know you've just recently completed this game, so the floor is yours.
Ah, it's only really interesting because at the time I got so far into the game and I couldn't beat the one of the bosses on the aeroplane
The
because what it
Tyrant.
doesn't tell you, which really frustrates me about the Code Veronica X, is that okay, there isn't any hardness setting. It is as hard as it is going to be. And in some respects, that's good, and in some respects, it's bad. So if you're like a hardcore survival game sort of Resident Evil aficionado, Code Veronica X is like your game to a certain extent. Whereas obviously, as I described before about being able to want to clear all the rooms and kill every zombie, if you go into Code Veronica X with that mindset, you are not going to complete this game. So back to early 2000s me getting to the airplane and then realizing that I've spent hours playing and then having to restart because you look at a guide and it tells you you need to save all the explosive arrows
Mm.
to actually defeat the tyrant. I was like, ah. So for me, if it was back in 2000, this game is terrible. But I've replayed it since, and there are some really good points about this game. Again, the hardcore survival aspect of it, where actually going around and trying to avoid zombies is a better tactic than
Hmm.
actually shooting them, which is kind of what it leads you to do. There is a quite a lot of egregious backtracking though through this game. So there's like unnecessary. I found one of the bits that annoyed me a little bit was you have this event happen, an explosion happens, and then it just redirects you, so you deliberately have to fight like a boss. And at no point before this had I really noticed in the other games that you kind of have these convoluted ways to make you have to have an encounter.
For
But playing
example.
this through only just a couple of weeks ago, because I was for this video, I wanted to try and play some of the games I had never got round to. So this is one I'd never completed. So I sat down and completed it. It's got a really good storyline. I actually quite enjoy the characters that you get to play as because you get to play as Claire and Chris this
Hmm.
time around, which are probably not the two best characters. I mean, we both like Leon and Jill, but they're a good sort of step down from that. The only issues I tend to find is that there are some real level design issues with this game. So when you come across, is it Stephen? Gold
Steve,
Luger's Steve.
one of the worst characters in the whole franchise.
Father. Anyway, when it's his boss, when he turns into a monster, you have to have two health potions
Yeah,
or two
yeah.
health things to stop you from dying. And if you don't carry two health potions, you can't beat that boss. And
Mm,
I would never have been able to beat that boss if I hadn't read about that before playing.
hmm.
So it's frustrating that it's a really good game, but it really has some design flaws that really let it down. And also, towards the end, the last act is sort of rushed, and it really just you zoom through it and it's done.
Yeah,
And
it's clearly an unfinished game.
yeah, I definitely agree with that assessment. I don't think my assessment has changed. I don't think it's terrible, but I still think it's in the bad category because of these game-breaking design faults with some of the boss fights.
Yeah. I would probably put it in average because obviously I've played it several times now, so I know exactly what I need to do, when to do it, and what to leave in the item chest. So similar to you, I didn't mess up with the tyrant on the plane. I messed up by taking all my best weapons to defeat I think the monster's called Nosferatu on top of the
Yeah, yeah.
helipad in Antarctica with Claire. So when it came to playing as Chris,
I
and
had
they're
no weapons.
introducing, yeah, virtually no weapons. Yeah, and you're fighting hunters, and there's way more bandersnatches, and it was just a nightmare.
Agree with you. I think it does fall in the average. It's. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but you have to have hindsight. You have to have pre thought out way you're going to have to play the game.
Yeah,
That's my main. It's not the easiest one just to pick up and come back to. You have to remember there's certain things you have to keep to be able to complete the game.
for all those watching, I mean, we're going to put in the average category, but if you want to make the argument to put it in bad, I'm not going to argue with you over it. But personally, I do get some enjoyment out of it, and I don't think it's a really bad game. I mean, looking at some of the other games coming up later on, there are definitely worse games in this
Oh yeah.
franchise compared to this one. So for me, it's a very average game. Moving on, we have the remake of the first game. Now, I'm just going to tell you this, Harry. This is not only my favorite game in the franchise, this is also one of my favorite games of all time. I'm saying like top 10 favorite games of all time. This was the first game that I can ever recall being remade fully from the ground up. It wasn't just like a remaster or a retexturing. They completely remade the first one, new graphics, new mechanics, in certain cases, new monsters, and extended the lore even further. I mean, I have played and completed this game so many times. I absolutely love this game. I think the atmosphere is phenomenal. The mansion feels like it was a place that, you know, bar than a lot of dodgy experiments were going on, it also feels like a place where people clearly lived and were working in. Like the attention to detail in the pre-rendered backgrounds in this game is crazy to me, and I'm still noticing new things to this day. I also like the fact they expanded the map even further. For example, you can go into the back garden area now, and also the introduction to Lisa Trevor, you know, another enemy that sort of stalks you throughout the game. You can't actually kill her. She's like invulnerable. And the backstory to that, if you read all the notes and the messages you find throughout the game, you just realized how fucked up the experiments were that they put this poor girl through. Exploring that side of it was just a really great addition to the game. The only part I wish they tidied up a little bit, because going by the canon, Chris, Jill, Rebecca, and Barry all survive the first game, and Brad, who ends up saving them in the helicopter. But if you complete the game as Chris, you only leave with Rebecca and Jill. Barry's never mentioned
Harry's
ever
not. Yeah,
again.
he's not even
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
is he?
It's like he doesn't exist. And if you complete the game with Jill, it's like Rebecca never existed. So I was hoping that would be something they fixed. They didn't. I mean,
It's such a small
it's a
detail. It's not.
small, small gripe. I'm putting it in masterpiece. I
I
just think
agree
it's
with
a
you. I agree with
phenomenal
you.
game.
It's one of the few games recently I've gone and played back along with Code Veronica X. I played Resident Evil, the HD remake of it, which is just a HD port of this game anyway. The inclusion of certain areas that were just more fleshed out with a better bosses. Um, I love the fact that if you kill the zombie and leave the body there without setting it on
Oh
fire,
yeah,
you get the crimson
Crimson
heads.
Heads. Yeah,
Um,
how can I forget to
the
mention that?
is the horrible bee section with the giant mutated bees. It's like
Mhm.
little wasps when you have to get the poison. There's just so many cool bits to it.
The massive
Um,
shark that tries to break the glass in the underground
yeah, yeah.
aquarium.
The aspect which I'm still glad that they kept is that Chris's game is more difficult than
Mm.
Jules. Again, you start off with a knife, don't get a pistol straight away. He's got the lighter instead of the lockpick, and there's just certain things he can't do
He doesn't get the
early
bazooka
on,
either.
and doesn't get the bazooka either. But no, you are right. Resident Evil, the remake is it basically, and you would probably hear me say this about several of the remakes. This is how a remake should be done.
Oh, 100%. Definitely.
You get iconic. The character models are just polished up. You've got the new sprites, new monsters, and all round it just fleshes out a lot more of the original game, of which the original game is a great game, but this is just elevates it and yeah puts the cherry on the top.
I'm very happy that you agree with me. Resident Evil Remake, you are a masterpiece.
Resident Evil Zero. Now, this is another game that I came back to. I'd had never owned a GameCube, so I never had the original of this. So I played the PlayStation 4 port, and it is a good storyline. I actually quite like playing as Rebecca, and Christ,
Billy.
Billy. Billy's quite a good character. Major game problems with this is some of the puzzles are so complicated. You
Mm.
play the first part of the game is on the train, and then there's a whole section about having to unlock and stop the train from crashing. And it's I even when I've looked up the solution to this, I was like, how the hell are you supposed to work this out? And you only have a time limit at the time as well. So I was like, whoever was playing this game first must have really struggled without the internet, to be honest. It also has the worst inventory management. So what they decided to try and implement in this game, which is different from all the others, is having two playable characters that are within the same story
Hmm.
and that you give uh, objects back and forth through, I mean, like a dumb waiter on the train, which is just you put the item in and then Billy gets the item and then you have to do something else whilst Rebecca's stuck wherever she is. And this is something that the game does over and over again. And also, there's points where I remember I dropped one of the weapons or the grappling hook. I didn't realize it was going to have another usage because you get the
Yeah, I
grappling
know
hook really early
exactly where
on.
you're leading with that.
You then go for it, and I left it in a hallway,
Mm.
quite like in the second area, sorry. And you need to use it later on for getting to the top of this tower.
Hmm.
But I got to the tower and I was like, I can't remember where I've left the bloody. And the thing is, it doesn't move, doesn't go over. But
Yeah.
if you don't remember where the hell you've dropped it or left it, you've got to go all the way back and go and get it. And I was like,
I think you can look in the
oh,
map and it tells you where all the items you've dumped on the floor,
yes,
where you've
it
left them.
does.
I initially quite liked that mechanic at first, but then I found it ended up being more of a detriment than something that I
It got
appreciated because it's
very old very quickly.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, they had a perfect system already, and that was the chests. I know it's unrealistic
Hmm.
that you can just put a chest and then appear in another chest in another room and all your stuff's there. But it just made life so much simpler rather than having to be like, oh, I'm going to give you this weapon, and then you
Hmm.
can have this one over here. And then if you suddenly decide, oh, I don't need this, or you don't
Some
think
of the
it's
weapons
important,
also take up two inventory slots as
yes,
well,
yeah.
which I just found insufferable. Like I didn't enjoy it in the first Resident Evil game. Why are you bringing it back in this one?
And also for a prequel game that doesn't really tie into the original
No.
game. So although you've got Rebecca Chambers, who is a part of Bravo team, who is in the first game,
Hmm.
she finishes this, lets Billy go, who's some convicted criminal, doesn't decide to mention any of her adventure from Zero. I don't know that's
Yeah, I think Chris actually asks her at one point, "What the hell's going on here?" And she's like, "Oh, I have no
I've
idea."
no idea. I've just been asleep.
Yeah, that's essentially what she did. She went to the mansion and slept for a few hours, and then clearly caught amnesia and forgot everything that had happened. I don't like the swapping between the two characters because, frankly, I think Billy's a much better character than Rebecca. He can absorb damage a lot better, whereas Rebecca, a few hits and she's in like danger
Yeah,
territory already.
yeah.
She can't take much damage at all. You may disagree with me. I personally think it's a bad game.
No, I
If
agree with you. It's a bad game.
okay, then yeah, it's not one I really choose to go back and play. I mean, I'm not saying I would never ever go back and play it again, but it's been a long time since I've played it, and I've had no desire to go back and play it since. So I think it's a bad game. Sorry, Resident Evil, you go into the bad category. I know it has its fans, but it's just not for me. Okay, moving on, we have Resident Evil 4, another one of my favorite games in the entire franchise. This is another game that I think is a masterpiece. This game to me has one of the greatest intros of any video game of all time. I'm talking about the part where you first arrive at the village and you have to hold off that's these this stampede of these crazy demented villagers that are way smarter than the zombies you faced before. You know, they can pick up weapons, they can communicate with each other, and the game gives you just enough resources to make through it. And when you start down and think, oh, yeah, I think I've got the situation under control, a second wave of them shows up, followed by a guy with a bag on his head wielding a chainsaw. And if he gets anywhere near you, your head is being lopped off your shoulders. And then when that section finally finishes and the title sequence Resident Evil 4 appears, I was like, okay, I'm going to really enjoy this game. And you think it's just going to be the village section, and then it goes to the castle, and then it goes to all the way to the island. They introduced like the regenerators, bring back the classic horror roots because this game is very action heavy. But I feel like it maintained just enough of the survival horror aspects and the jump scares to sort of to keep those old school fans still on board, but also introduce a whole new wave of new fans to the franchise. It's now considered one of the greatest games ever made, also one of the most important games ever made. I believe it was the first game to introduce the third person camera perspective as well, which was pretty revolutionary for this time. Like, you know, so many games have adopted that now, you know, from Mass Effect to Gears of War, etc. It also knows the right time to up the difficulty, also when to introduce new weapons to the player as well. I just think it's phenomenal. I mean, if I had to nitpick one thing, I think it goes on a little bit too long. Maybe it could have been trimmed down by maybe an hour or so. But that aside, I think Resident Evil 4 is a masterpiece. I'm well within the vast majority of the opinion that it is a phenomenal game.
It was a big departure from the previous. I
Mm,
was so used to zombie. This is more of a sort of personal opinion rather than a practical one, but you will see where I'm coming from.
yeah.
I was a little bit sad about the zombies being gone, but
Mm,
the parasites coming taking over instead, mean people being more possessed than
mhm,
being zombies. That kind of disappointed me a little bit. And I couldn't get to grips originally with the over the shoulder.
mhm.
But the one that made me fall in love with this game, or the version, was the Wii.
Oh yeah.
The Wii version of Resident Evil 4 for me is the definitive masterpiece. You had the controls with the nunchuck, and then you had the aiming. Once I'd experienced this, I was like, this is how this game needs to be
Yeah.
experienced. Because you then have the over the shoulder, and then you're pointing at the screen,
Mhm.
and it used to play so fluidly on the Wii.
They
So
absolutely nailed the motion
oh,
controls for that game.
yeah, they definitely did, and that's very interesting. Whereas I have a bit of a like a love-hate relationship with Resident Evil 4 purely because I couldn't get on with the original with the joysticks. But once it got ported over to the Wii and then they were using the motion controls, that game just took on a whole nother level
Hmm.
and became a masterpiece in my opinion. So I agree with you, it is a masterpiece,
Yeah, yeah,
but more I came to it
yeah.
much later.
Your inner purist was like, no, too much ammunition. I'm not
Yeah.
interested.
Well, I was just more like to something. I like the rotting
Yeah, yeah.
zombie aspect, but once I kind of got my head around that and I got used to it, the variety of the bosses and the enemies in Resident Evil 4 is so entertaining.
Can I just say this game still looks really bloody good to this day as well?
Yes, yeah.
It looks
I mean,
amazing.
it made me question why they've made a remake of it, but that's going to come up a little bit later, I suppose.
Yeah. So we agree that goes in Masterpiece.
It is a masterpiece, yes.
Moving on from Resident Evil 4, we have Resident Evil 5.
the best way and the most fun I ever had with Resident Evil 5 is when we've been playing it together or I've been
Yeah, yeah.
playing with
The
my
co-op
brother.
in that game was
This
great.
game is and very much the best way to play it is split screen multiplayer. It's
Hmm.
what it's designed for. It's also what where it falls down. Because if you don't want to play with someone else and you want to play it as a hardcore original Resident Evil style playing a game, Sheva or Chris is going to get in the bloody way all the time, especially when you get kind of enemies that you get from Resident Evil 4, the ones that can instantly kill you with a chainsaw
Hmm.
or machetes that kind of cut your head off and
Or they
things
just
like
blow
this.
their way through their ammo.
Or they blow the yeah, you blow the way through the ammo. Oh yes, they do. Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
Or you get like a slight gash from a knife, and they go, "Oh, I'm here to save you," and they're spraying. Don't use the first aid
Don't use
spray.
that thing. I can survive for 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they really hadn't programmed the AI for your partner very well.
Mm,
So it was like it's a really frustrating single player experience, but a really entertaining two-player experience,
hmm.
if that makes sense.
You know, this is one of the highest selling games in the franchise as well. They sold so many copies of this game when it first came
I
out.
mean, admittedly, it is a beautiful game. Apart from the fact that Chris looks like a little weasel head on a
He's got a
massive,
little
like,
bean head, yeah,
little bean head on this huge muscular body, and it's like,
and he's
what happened
punching
to Chris?
boulders. Yeah.
When did he start taking steroids between Code Veronica X and this game?
Well, probably because Wesker kicked his ass, and he's probably thinking,
Oh yeah,
"Okay,
no.
yeah."
To be fair, he suddenly has the monster Wesker that tries to kick his ass, and then he's like, right, I need to pump myself full of.
Mm. This is the game where you finally kill Wesker as well after all that time. By the way, if you're a fan of the survival horror genre, this ain't the game for you.
Yeah, no, there's no survival horror aspect to this game.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
it is the biggest departure from the formula that they had designed.
yeah.
But like I said, the split screen aspect
Mhm.
of it is by far the best part of it.
But I think it's a good game, though. I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, I really enjoyed it when it first came out.
That's the thing, is that my most entertainment is when you're playing with someone else. But
I'll put
with
it
that,
I'll put it in good. I'll put it in good. I'll
yeah,
put it in
good,
good. I
a
think
good.
it's a
I
good
think
game.
good is a good in between because really it's an average game one player, but a
Hmm.
great game
Yeah,
playing it two players.
yeah.
So
No, that,
good, I think, is a fair assessment.
moving on, we have Resident Evil Revelations, another one that I think you're in the middle of playing right
I'm in the
now.
middle of playing at the moment.
Okay.
I'm really enjoying it at the moment. I find that the bite-sized episodes are just enough for what my lifestyle at the moment, going to work and coming home. Really only got like an hour to sort of get into it. And
Hmm.
you know, the episodes themselves will take about 40 minutes.
Hmm.
So and they start off really simple, quite small. There's not a lot. You just blast your way through enemies. There isn't that much in the ways of the classic Resident Evil gameplay.
Hmm.
And then as I've got to like the third episode, getting around the tanker and going into the casino and the big promenade
Hmm.
parts, it's starting to feel more like a Resident Evil game. It's almost like they were feeding bits in the early episodes, but now like the levels are just getting that little bit longer. There's a little bit more thought process in how to do things. And I really enjoyed one of the bosses I've had to fight, where you keep retreating back. You've got waves of enemies coming at
Hmm.
you, but you come back and there's like explosive barrels
Hmm.
strategically placed, and you're just trying to hit the
Hmm.
barrels as it's coming past, and it just makes you think about tactically what you need to do. They introduced a scanner for items. It feels like if it was something that was in like, that they work on in the sort of a later title, you may be able to tell me whether they've improved this in Revelations 2. It just seems like a mechanic that's kind of just been introduced, but it's not been mechanically completely sort of ironed out. There are
Hmm.
points where it will be flashing, telling me something's around, and I'm looking
Hmm.
around on the scanner like,
Yeah.
where the hell is this thing? But no, so far I really enjoying the characters, the character interplay, the storyline's quite good
Plus, it's
so
great to
far.
play as Jill again because
Yeah,
I'm a big Jill fan, so I was quite happy. That was actually the main reason. Well, obviously, I heard a few good things about the game. It reviewed very well. It was initially a 3DS game that was later ported to PC, and I think later on consoles. They gave it like a great big graphical update as
yeah,
well, and
yeah.
tweaked a few things with the
What
mechanics.
I am liking is the variety. So you start on the tanker, there's like these sort of fish ish esque sort of some
hmm
marine monsters.
hmm
You then you're fighting as Chris, and you're in the snow, and there's these
Yeah.
like wolf monsters. And then later on, it has a flashback, and you're fighting hunters. So there is quite a good variety to the stages that are in the game.
I mean, if I had to rank it, I actually think it's a very solid game. I mean, I've played it a handful of times and I've always enjoyed it, so I'd probably put it in the good category.
Yeah, yeah,
I
no,
think
I
it's
agree.
definitely an
That's
above average game.
There's
Okay,
very little I can complain about it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
always the good thing.
Yeah, it's like it's just another Resident Evil game, but it's a solid Resident Evil game. Moving on, we have Resident Evil 6. Now,
It's terrible.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think this is a good game at all. I was trying to think of, okay, let me try and find some good about this game. The only good thing I can say about it is that I think the first half of Leon's scenario is pretty good. But then after that, the game just falls apart, in my opinion. I hate Chris's scenario in this game. People thought Resident Evil 5 went too far with the action. They took it even further with this game. It's literally just balls to the wall action from start to finish, full of quick time events. You spend a good chunk of your time watching the great big dramatic scenes happen as opposed to actually playing them. You also play as Wesker's son in this game. I'm sort of derping out on the name. I can't remember his name, but you also play as him as one of the characters as well. And once you've beaten those three scenarios, you can play as Ada, who is just like a nothing scenario. I played it when it first came out. I completed all four scenarios. Didn't like it then. Then, when I was getting into PC gaming, I purchased it again because it was in a Steam sale. Played it again, all the four campaigns. No, it was still terrible. In fact, I disliked it even more. Like in Chris's scenarios in particular, they're just throwing waves of enemies at you, but they don't give you enough ammunition to take them out. It's like, what the hell am I playing? It's like Gears of War, and I enjoy the Gears of War games, but I don't play Resident Evil for that style of gameplay. I mean, I think they took it as far as they could with 5, and I think after that, me and you were having conversations at the time. I hope they dial it back a little bit, maybe go back more to it, maybe go back more to the series roots. But because 4 and 5 sold so many copies, they thought this is how
This
we
is the
just
way
make
forward. This
this
is
is the
what
way
people
forward.
want.
Yeah, this is how we make money. But they went so far with it, it ended up having the polar opposite effect. Frankly, this is the one I'm most intrigued about if they're going to remake it. I think they will. I think they're going to remake all the games up until 6 and then stop at 7 because 7's doesn't need a remake, but I'll touch on that when we get to it.
Yeah, I played it for 5 minutes a few years ago in an attempt to try and, it's the only Resident Evil game from the original six that I was like, I want to give it a go. And yeah, I think I got stuck in the first 5 minutes, and I don't know whether it was just design or the way it looked. I just couldn't figure it out. And just something just goes, yeah, if this is the first experience of this, I'm not going to enjoy this. I think we had a little discussion about this not so long ago that because they have three separate storylines, it's almost like they've tried to do three different games. They've concentrated on one of these particular bits and actually did a full fleshed out storyline,
Or even two
maybe
of
a
them.
full Resident Evil game.
hmm
You might have had something, which is probably may well be how they tackle it when if or when they remake it, they may end up by doing that and just trying to concentrate on one aspect rather than trying to do three separate storylines that don't really meld very well together. But I agree with you, it's terrible.
Moving on, we have Resident Evil Revelations 2. Now, I know you haven't played this one, but if you enjoyed the first one, you'll pretty much enjoy the second one. Except in this game, you're not playing as Jill and Chris and whoever the partners, whoever your companions were, I can't remember their names. You play as Claire Redfield, who has Barry Burton's daughter as her companion, and you also play as Barry Burton, who has a young girl as his companion, who may or may not, depending on the choices you make, end up being the villain at the end of the game. But I won't go into
Oh,
too much detail about that. You mentioned the scanner mechanics. They kind of bring that back in this game, except Barry's daughter, she carries a flashlight with her. So to find items, you have to switch controls over to her, and she'll use the flashlight, and then you'll see the shining items you can pick up.
that's
And
a
with
cool change. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Her character is insufferable though, so bear in mind if you didn't like Steve Burnside, you won't like her. She's so bloody annoying in this game. And the young girl, you who accompanies Barry, she has sort of she has like special psychic abilities, so she can point at things and like, oh, there's some ammo over there, there's a herb you can pick up over there, there's an item you can interact with. So that's how they deal with that mechanic. It's episodic again, like the first game, because once again I think it was originally released on the 3DS and later ported to I could be wrong with that, but later ported to PC and console. Once again, I think it's just another solid, good Resident Evil game. So I would definitely recommend you check it out after you finish Revelations, and I would put it in the good category. I think Revelations and Revelations 2 are kind of just as good as each other. Moving on, we have Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Now, unfortunately, much to my despair, this is another game you haven't played. I'm going to
Well,
let you explain why you haven't played it.
it's a big change because they decided to go to the first person view. If I correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I
Yeah, yeah.
haven't played. I've only ever seen the shots, and it's all from the first person perspective. And there's something about what you were saying earlier about why the first Resident Evil scared you so much. I think the reason it really tapped into your psyche, I don't know whether you dream this way. I
Mhm,
know I do, is I dream on a third person perspective,
mhm.
like Resident Evil. Maybe because of Resident Evil, I have no idea. But it always makes me feel more like, oh, rather than, although this is our perspective, we see from inside our heads. So surely the first person perspective should be more scary. I just don't get on with it.
If you enjoyed Resident Evil 1 up until I would say Resident Evil 4, I think you would really enjoy this game. It goes right back to its survival horror roots, where resources are limited, ammo is limited, you don't get weapons straight away. It has stalker enemies in the game which you can't kill until the story allows you to kill them. But you do fight, they're not zombies or people who are possessed or anything like that. They're sort of like these weird mold monsters, which you can kill. You can easily defend yourself against them. But when you fight the members of what's called the Baker family, that involves a lot of hiding, only attacking them unless you absolutely have to. And if they do catch you, just run, just run away. The atmosphere is incredible. It's also not an overly long game as well, so you can get a lot of enjoyment out of multiple playthroughs. It also brings back like not limited save function, but save points are dotted around. There's no auto saving, I should say. It felt like the franchise was sort of on life support at that point because Resident Evil 6 was, I think it sold very well, but critically, it was such, they took such a drubbing from it. And it was also during the time when horror was shifting back to that more, okay, less about the action, more about terrifying the player. Alien Isolation, the PT trailer that came out during the time, which ended up, being the scrapped Silent Hill game. Plus, you're not playing as a guy. This is no Chris Redfield. This is no Leon Kennedy. This is no Jill Valentine or even Claire Redfield by that point. You are literally just playing this average bloke that's just trying to find his missus, and he ends up to find her. He ends up stumbling across this, this massive property which is owned by these absolute lunatics. Harry, I strongly cannot recommend if you can get past the whole if you can get past the whole first person perspective, I think you would genuinely really enjoy this game. So I would definitely give it a go. I know you can't rank it because you never played it before, but I would put it in masterpiece. I think it's one of the best games they've ever done, and I think one of the highest selling games they've ever done as well. So for that, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard goes into masterpiece. Moving on, we have the remake of Resident Evil 2.
I absolutely adore this game. The remake of Resident Evil 2 has some of the most beautiful graphics I've seen on a game. I mean, just to give you a slight little description of the, I've never seen a hamburger rendered so succulently that the lorry driver's like munching on this thing, and it's like, oh wow, it makes me feel hungry every time I watch
I
the
love how
scene.
that's the first thing you mentioned.
It
But
is.
I know exactly what you mean, though.
It's like the grease that's like slightly shining off it. Oh, and then obviously slam, you see the woman get smashed to pieces, and you're like, oh Christ. Again, like we said about Resident Evil 1's remake, this remake basically took all the essence that made 2 so good and just upped the graphics, made all the gameplay just so playable. The over the shoulder shot like in Resident Evil 4. The lighting in it is just spectacular because there's points where you'll just see like a shadow of a zombie go past the thing, and you're like, "Oh crap, where the hell is that?" If you get lost, the map's really easy and will point out where you need to be. They didn't drastically go too far away from the events of what happened in Resident Evil 2, and the fact that you still have the scenario A and the scenario B, although they don't tend to impact each other anywhere near
That
as
was the
much.
only part I think they sort of botched in this game.
Yeah.
I felt like they handled the A-B-B-A scenario better in the
In the
original.
original. Yeah, I agree with you. And it just reminded me so much of why I love 2.
How awesome is Mr. X in this
Oh,
game
Mr.
as
X is
well?
brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
And he literally arrives in almost exactly the same way he does
Hmm.
in the original cut, and in the original game as well.
Hmm.
Um, if there was any real gripes, I still don't like the Sherry parts.
But they are a little bit better, but I know what you mean, yeah.
They're still annoying.
I think this is the highest selling game in the franchise as well.
Oh, I'm not
This has sold
surprised.
like it's one of Capcom's most successful games they've ever released.
I mean, it's easily the most beautiful, in my opinion, in terms of the graphics and the lighting and all the settings. I mean, it just takes the precinct that was done so well in the original and just runs with it and just
Yeah.
renders the police station, Raccoon Police Station, in such beautiful lighting, textures, everything's.
I'm guessing we're going to put this in
Oh
Masterpiece.
yeah, yeah, I think it's a masterpiece, and
Yeah, I
probably,
totally agree with you.
in my opinion, is my favorite in the whole of the Resident Evil franchise. It's such a good game for me.
Moving on, we have, frankly, the polar opposite to the
The,
Resident Evil 2
ooh,
remake,
yeah,
that being the Resident
how
Evil
you
3
not to
remake.
make a remake?
I think this game's shite, to be honest with you. I think it's better than Resident Evil 6. So I would put, I think it's a bad game, though. It's not terrible. It doesn't give me a headache when I play it, put it that way. Talk about botching, like what could have been the perfect follow-up to Resident Evil 2. I mean, how could you mess up the Nemesis? He was like the main selling point of this game because everyone's like, how are they going to handle it? They absolutely nailed Mr. X. He's like, it's so underwhelming. The only part where it works is when you're in like the city part at the beginning,
Yeah,
where when he finds you, he literally bolts it for you. You think, okay, this is
but
what you were
they
hoping
cut
to
out
see.
so much of the original's
The clock
beginning.
tower's missing, the
Well,
park's
also
missing.
there's the whole section of the city is missing
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
beginning of the game, and it's almost like that's my favorite part of 3 is the city part at the beginning, and they cut out a big chunk of it, and I was like, what's going on here? And then there's something, the satisfaction you got, like I described this to you earlier when we were talking about Nemesis. You're firing that last bit and you're blowing it to pieces is so satisfying, but it's lost
Mm,
in the remake. But it also was packaged with a little game in the NA section called Resident Evil Resistance, and they were
yeah.
packaged together, and it
And
felt
nobody
like
played
they
it.
no one played it. It was pointless. I mean, I felt like I remember I loaded it up to sort of go, what is this Resistance thing? And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, it's a multiplayer game, and I was like, could you not have just not bothered with this bit and made a full remake of Resident Evil 3, please? The Nemesis just doesn't really feel as unstoppable as he does in the original game. And it's just one of those really frustrating examples of like they've tried to capitalize on what made Remake 2 really, really good that you think, oh, three's going to do. And they just took out large swathes of the game that was like, oh, there was a reason those bits were in there.
And still charge full price for it.
Yeah, but exactly.
It's easily the worst remake they have done. In this instance, the original one that came out on the PlayStation
It's
is
superior.
leagues better. I think it's so much better. So
So
bad?
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, better than Resident Evil 6, but that's not saying much.
Yeah.
Moving on to Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8, depending on your preference. This is another one you haven't played, right?
Nope.
You should definitely play Resident Evil 7 first. If you enjoy 7, play Village. If you didn't enjoy 7, don't bother with Village because, I mean, it's a very good game. I played it quite a lot when it first came out. I haven't gone back and played it since. However, this has a gameplay mode which you can play in third person. It's something that they later released because, you know, it is designed to be played as an FPS. But since then, they released a version where you can actually see the character in front of you and play it from like a third person point of view, like the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake. I remember the marketing for this game when it first came out. You know, everyone was really excited by the character called Lady Demetresque. And like she's barely in it for like I think she's like in it for like the first quarter of the game. Because there's like different areas which you visit, and in each area, I think there's four different areas. The village sort of being the hub area, so you break off into it's a bit like the Hyrule Field, and then you have the Water Temple, the Fire Temple that you sort of explore. That type of um, open world, for lack of a better term. And in each of those areas, you have a boss, and the first boss you fight was her. So everyone was a bit like disappointed after that because she's like never mentioned again after that. There is this one area in this game which has like the stalker enemy, if you will. It's like this, you may have seen it on YouTube. It's like this massive giant baby, but it looks absolutely hideous and it screams and it cries. You can't kill it, you have to hide from it. And, you know, if it catches you, it's an instant kill. So that was probably the highlight for me. But of course, once you play it multiple times, it doesn't really have the same effect. But the first time I played it, I was like, that was hideous. Like that was genuinely terrifying. And then the game sort of starts to fall apart at that point. It becomes way too action heavy. Some of the dumb stuff you see from Resident Evil 5 and 6 starting to creep back in again, if you will. Like these massively over the top boss sequences. But all that being said, it's a good game. I would definitely recommend playing it. Oh, Chris is also in this game as well, but he's an absolute dickhead in this game. You know, he feels like very far removed from the Chris Redfield, you know, we've grown to know and love from the other games, if you will, in the franchise.
Yeah,
So yeah, but Resident Evil Village, I would put it in the good category. If you enjoy 7, give it a go. Moving on to the final game on this tier list ranking, we have the remake of Resident Evil 4. Correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't played this one either,
I
have
haven't
you?
played it either. I just haven't had. I've just never got round to it. I really, really like Resident Evil 4. And then Resident Evil 4, like you say, still holds up to today. Like the graphics wise, I still like the look of it. So didn't. I never really saw the necessity to give it a remake. But you might be able to, correct me.
See, I initially thought the same as you. And I thought after the remake of Resident Evil 3, I thought they were going to remake Code Veronica. Because if there's one game that needs a remake outside of 6, it's also that one. Capcom are acting as if that game doesn't exist anymore. It's like, no, no, we don't talk about that. Uh, but Resident Evil 4, that's the one we're going to remake. And my first reaction was, why are you remaking Resident Evil 4? How are they going to remake this game? Like, to put it in context, it would be like Nintendo announcing we're going to remake the Ocarina of Time. You know, it's one of those, you know, big games that had such a huge impact on the gaming industry. Like, how are you going to do that? And I'm happy to say Capcom somehow managed to pull off the impossible. They did it. It's another fantastic game. Like, I'm putting this in the masterpiece category. I'm just going to say that now. I enjoyed this remake so much. I played it so many times. I must have completed around about 10 times when it first came out. Like I ended up getting the platinum. But what they also did, they didn't make the original obsolete. There's still plenty of reasons to go back and play the original. So certain things that are in the original didn't quite make it into the remake and sort of vice versa. So in the remake, they expanded on a few things. Graphically, it looks amazing. Yeah, just a phenomenal game. I would put this right up in the masterpiece category along with the original. So you've got a PS5. I think it's actually on sale at the moment, Harry. Put it this way, my brother doesn't really play any Resident Evil games. They're not really his cup of tea. He bought this game, and actually, I bought it for him as a gift. Just play it. And he said, "Okay, Tom, you got me. This is a really, really good game." Like he played it so many times, and now he's gone back and played the original and really enjoyed it as well. So, yeah, Resident Evil 4 remake, you are a masterpiece. And there you have it. That is our tier list ranking for the Resident Evil mainline games. Do you agree with our picks? Whether you do or don't, let us know in the comments section. Include your own ranking. We're always interested to hear what other people have to say. Thank you once again, Harry, so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed this video. Like you said, we've been meaning to do this for a long time, so I'm really glad we finally got ourselves together to give our opinions on this franchise. It's a franchise that we hold near and dear to our hearts, dating back to when we were not even teenagers.
There's so many like funny little memories I have, like my brother going to Woolworths and buying Resident Evil 2.
Allworths.
Yeah, yeah, Woolworths in New Malden, like before Woolworths like completely closed down and not a thing anymore. Or picking up Resident Evil 4 and playing like, the original game. Just so many good um, memories of all these games, to be fair.
Yeah.
But thank you.
So if Sean was here, he would ask me, "So what you saying, Tom?" And what I will say is, everybody have a good day and play Resident Evil. Not Resident Evil 6, though. That game's terrible. Wait
Yeah,
for the
I agree.
remake.